defendant is present. Counsel for the defendant, Assistant State Attorney. Both sides ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. If we go a little past 5, I might be able to get on.
What is a little past 5?
5:15 or so.
As long as it's not past 5:15.
Okay. I'll talk fast. I'm trying to get through all these people just to
Well, let's get them in there.
move it along.
So y'all gonna go home and relax this weekend.
We are?
Maybe some of us.
We're working on Monday. We have some depots scheduled.
Well,
We don't.
I gotta do all my, I got about 200 probate cases that I need to get out.
All rise for re-entry.
You may be seated. State recognized president of jury,
Yes, Your Honor.
defense,
Yes, Your Honor.
and members of the jury. Did you follow all of my previous instructions? Okay, thank you. State may call the next witness.
The state will call Jonathan Cute, C-U-T-E. Your Honor, the next two witnesses are the ones we had discussed earlier with the camera.
Please
Thank
raise your
you.
right hand, face the clerk.
You solemnly swear the testimony she gives shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You may proceed.
Please tell the court and the jury your name and occupation.
Jonathan Cute, C-U-T-E. I'm a police officer with the City of Orlando,
How long have you been employed with OPD?
approximately 13 years.
Back on November 6th of 2009, how were you employed with that agency?
At the time, again, signed to the Orlando Police SWAT team.
Okay. As part of your responsibilities with the SWAT team, did you participate in a call-out to a location at 5465 Curry Ford Road, apartment 207B?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you dressed in full SWAT regalia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As you and the team approached that location, did you make your presence known to an individual by the name of Jason Rodriguez?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Once your presence was known to him, what role did you take in trying to apprehend him?
Mr. Rodriguez was directed to come to the front door of his apartment. Myself and other SWAT team members had positioned ourselves at the bottom of the stairway. Mr. Rodriguez was then directed to lie on his stomach and crawl down the stairs to our position where we're at the bottom of the landing.
Okay. And he did that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you able to take him into custody at that point?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Did you place handcuffs on him?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Did he make any statements in your presence at that time?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
After placing Mr. Rodriguez into a pair of handcuffs, he spontaneously stated, "I'm just going through a bad time."
Did you respond at all?
No,
Or
ma'am.
try to engage him in conversation?
No, ma'am.
What did you do?
I searched Mr. Rodriguez, stood him up on his feet, and then walked him outside.
Okay. Did he make any other statements at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he say?
As I was bringing Mr. Rodriguez out to a uniform patrol unit, Mr. Rodriguez spontaneously stated, "This whole thing will work itself out."
Did you respond to that statement at all?
No, ma'am.
Did you try to engage him in conversation at that point?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you then turn him over to other officers for transport?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have no other questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Cross.
No Now,
This was, by the time you all got there and came in contact with Mr. Rodriguez, is it after 1:30 in the afternoon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Specifically 14:18, correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
2:18 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
No other questions, Your Honor.
May the officer be excused.
Subject to recall, yes.
Thank you, officer. You may be excused,
Thanks.
subject to recall.
Thanks, sir.
State may call our next witness.
Kevin Easterling?
Please raise your right hand, please.
you solemnly swear the testimony she gives shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You may proceed.
Please tell the court and the jury your name and occupation
Kevin Easterling, police officer.
with the Orlando Police Department.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been with that agency?
19 years.
Back on November 6th of 2009, did you have a particular assignment?
Yes, ma'am.
What was it?
There was a special weapons and tactics team call out for an incident.
All right. Is that commonly referred to as SWAT?
Yes, ma'am.
Special Weapons and Tactics?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Did that call-out take you to a location off of Curry Ford Road, the Hollowbrook Apartments?
Yes, ma'am.
While there, what responsibilities were you assigned?
Well, initial responsibility was when we were actually in our armored personnel carrier, which is basically just a ballistic truck. When we arrived, we saw the vehicle that we were told the defendant was driving, backed in, and we were told to verify the tag of the vehicle because it was backed in.
All right. Over your shoulder, you'll see a photograph displayed, states 15 in evidence. Is that the vehicle that you are describing?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. We've heard some evidence that the vehicle tires were, the valve stems were pulled.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was that your responsibility to take care of on that day?
Yes, ma'am. My team leader, Sergeant Scott Smith, ordered me to disable the tires on the vehicle.
Okay. The upper right-hand part of the photograph shows a window. Were you able to see any activity in that window as you approached that silver vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what did you see?
The defendant showed himself in the window, and I immediately relayed that to my team leader, Scott Smith, and he started to call him out on the PA.
All right, when you say he showed himself in the window, in what fashion?
He, one of the tires that I removed the valve stem made a pretty loud noise from all the air coming out, and that looked like basically startled him. He looked through the window, you know, we immediately said, started saying police. He showed us his hands in the window.
Okay. Did you play any role in taking him into custody?
I did.
What role was that?
He complied with all the commands. He came out the front door. We had him get on his stomach all the way down the stairs. I was covering the doorway to the entrance to the apartment. He was down at around my feet. And that's when I believe I was assisting Officer Cute who actually did the cuffing of him.
All right. Did you hear the defendant, or did you hear Mr. Rodriguez make any statements at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you hear him say?
The statement I got was, "I'm just going through a tough time. I'm sorry."
Where were you positioned in relation to him when you heard that?
He was right at my feet because we cuffed him right at the bottom of the stairs.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no other questions of the witness, Your Honor.
Cross?
You said you were with Officer Cute,
Yes, ma'am.
so you all were handcuffing him, searching him together?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
May the officer be excused.
Yes, subject to recall.
Thank you, officer. You
Thank
may
you,
be
Your Honor.
excused. State may call the next witness.
Gary Crosby?
proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the court and the jury your name and occupation.
Gary Crosby, I'm a crime scene investigator with the Orlando Police Department.
Okay, how long have you worked for the Orlando Police Department?
Almost 14 years.
Okay, all as a crime scene investigator?
Yes, ma'am.
What sort of training or education do you have that qualifies you for that position?
I was a sworn police officer almost 12 years before that. I've been through several different schools with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and I've had 4 months on the job training when I started with Orlando.
Okay. And as a crime scene investigator, what is it that you're called upon to do?
We respond to various types of scenes to document with photographs, sketches, collection of evidence, processing of evidence.
As a result of your employment then with the Orlando Police Department, were you one of the crime scene investigators that took some responsibility for collecting evidence and documenting the scene at 1000 Legion Place, the Gateway Center in Suite 800?
Yes, ma'am.
How many crime scene investigators were actually working that scene?
At the scene itself, I
Yes.
believe there were at least 5 of us.
Did you each then have separate responsibilities at the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Before anything was collected from the scene, was it photographed,
Yes, ma'am.
videotaped?
Yes, ma'am.
And the Orlando Police Department utilizes a digital imaging system to gather three-dimensional evidence as well. Is that
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Right. Was one of the other crime scene investigators involved in the retention of that sort of data?
Yes.
Okay. While you were there, did you assist in determining how many shell casings were left at the offices of Reynolds, Smith and Hill?
Yes.
How many were
20.
were located and ultimately collected?
20.
What is a shell casing?
It's the part that contains the primer, the projectile, and the part that's extracted from a pistol once it is fired.
After a walkthrough of the area, when the casings are located, are they given some sort of identifying mark?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Okay, would that be an evidence tent marker?
Yes, ma'am.
In this specific case, were the 20 shell casings marked with these evidence tents?
They were.
Right. Were they given numbers 1 to 8, 9 through 19, 26, 27, and 31 through 34?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. They were photographed in position as well?
They were.
Who had the responsibility then for collecting those items?
I collected them.
What do you do with them once they are collected?
Collect them, secure them in the van, and once we leave the scene, they are secured in our forensic locker and then entered into property and evidence.
You don't take responsibility for testing the items themselves in any way, shape, or form, comparing them to a firearm if located, for instance.
No, ma'am, I don't.
If I may approach the witness with several items, Your Honor.
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as states N-O-P and R. Have you take a look at those and tell
Okay.
me, look at them all first, and then I'll have a question for you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What do you recognize those items to be?
That's the shell casings that were collected from the scene.
All right. In R for identification, are there 13 shell casings packaged in here?
Yes, ma'am.
In P for identification, there's 1.
Yes, ma'am.
In O for identification, there's one,
Yes, ma'am.
and in N for identification, there's one.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Certainly.
There's actually 17 packages in here. There's 13 Winchester, then there's 4 additional. And these here are ones that were sent to the lab, I believe, if I'm not wrong.
All right, so let me correct myself then. 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17,
That's correct.
and then 3 additional, making 20.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I would seek to introduce R, P, N, and O for identification and evidence.
What says the defense?
No objection.
Be received in evidence as
R is state 16, P state 17, N state 18, and O state 19.
I have no other questions for this witness, Your Honor.
cross-examination.
Officer Crosby, in your role as a crime scene technician, are you also familiar with how a bullet casing would be projected or ejected from a gun, and
Yes.
then how it would fall?
Yes, ma'am.
When a bullet casing falls to the ground, particularly on carpeted surface, does it bounce, roll, move in some way, or would it immediately stick?
It would determine how the carpet is. I mean, if it's a hard floor, like say an outdoor carpet, it could hit and bounce. If it's a real thick carpet, it could hit and stick. That's hard to determine how that would work.
Based on the way that a bullet casing has landed on the ground, could you tell from which direction it would have been shot?
No.
No further questions.
Redirect.
No, correct, thank you.
Sir, you may be excused.
Thank you, sir.
Statement call the next witness.
Doug Thomas? Please raise your right hand.
Solemnly swear the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon, please tell the court and the jury your name and occupation.
Douglas Thomas, I'm a crime scene investigator with the Orlando Police Department.
How long have you been with OPD?
Just over 23 years.
Have you been a crime scene investigator that entire time?
Yes, I have.
As a result of your employment with the Orlando Police Department, were you one of the crime scene investigators assigned to assist in the collection, in the preservation and collection of evidence at 1000 Legion Place
Yes, I was.
on November 6th of 2009?
Correct.
All right. Were you also asked to respond to another location on that date?
Yes.
All right. And where did you go?
Well, I went to several different locations. Do you want them all?
All right, let me focus then. Were you asked to go to Curry Ford Road, an apartment in the Hollowbrook Apartments during the execution of a search warrant?
Yes, I was.
What is your role in that process?
I went to the apartment to document the apartment before the investigators actually started searching the apartment. So I took photographs of everything inside the apartment. Then as they found things inside the apartment, then I would take photographs of those items.
All right. I'm going to show you a series of photographs. They are marked sequentially as states AG through AW for identification. take some of those out of here. AG through AT for identification. T is of Thomas. Take a look at those photographs and tell me if you recognize them as ones that you took on November 6, 2009, at 5660 Curry Ford Road, apartment B207.
Yes, these are the photographs I took at the apartment.
Okay. Do they fairly and accurately depict the location and condition of items that were inside prior to your collecting them?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce the reference letter to exhibits for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
If I could just see which particular
Yes.
ones were. Objection.
It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
AG states 20, AH states 21, HI states 22, states AJ 23, AK states 24, AL 25, AM states 26, AM 27, AO states 28, AP states 29, AQ states 30, AR states 31, AS states 32, and AT states 33.
All right, while those are marked by the clerk, I'm going to show you some other items of evidence with the court's permission.
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as W for identification. Tell me if that's an item that you're familiar with.
Yes, it is.
How are you familiar with it?
It's got my initials across the seal, and it's got the information about the case on the front of the bag.
You affix some sort of identifying information to the front of that bag so that you know what item is contained inside
Yes.
and what has been placed on there.
It's a black nylon holster with a belt from the bedroom.
If I may approach the witness with what's been marked as State's Exhibit Z.
You
for
may.
identification. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Z. Can you take a look at this box and tell me if it's something that you're familiar with?
I'm familiar with the box and the contents.
All right. How are you so familiar?
It's got my initials across the seal. It's got the information about the case on the front. It's got my handwriting on the front of the box.
Okay. Are these items that you collected on November 6th of 2009 at the apartment at the Hollowbrook Apartments?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce W and Z for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
May we approach?
You may.
Thank you.
Okay, those exhibits will be received in evidence subject to the limitations that I've announced here at the bench. Thank you. Madam Clerk, you may announce the exhibit numbers.
W states 34 and Z states 35.
All right, permission to publish items, photographic items marked while we were conducting other business.
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 20 in evidence. Can you tell us what that is?
There to the right is a closet where a safe is located inside the family room.
Is this the entrance door to the apartment?
Yes, I believe it is.
.21 in evidence. What is this?
That's an overall view of the, I believe that's the family room area.
22 in evidence. What is that?
Just another overall view of inside of the apartment.
23 in evidence. What room is this?
I believe that's the family room couch inside the family room area.
Is this the condition in which you found it that day?
Yes.
24 in evidence.
It's a photograph of the kitchen.
Is that the condition in which it was found on that date?
Yes.
25 in evidence.
It's a photograph of the kitchen counter.
26.
It's also a photograph of the kitchen counter on the right-hand side of the kitchen.
Is that the condition in which that room was found that day?
Yes.
27 in evidence. What is that?
It's a bed in the bedroom.
Again, is that the condition in which that bed was found?
Yes.
28 in evidence. Is the bed shown in this photograph as well?
The edge of the bed is shown on the left side of the photograph, just the edge of the bed.
Okay. And what else is depicted therein?
Several large plastic totes kind of in the center of the photograph, and then on the right-hand side there is a wooden chest.
Is that same wooden chest shown in number 30 in evidence?
Yes, that's a close-up view.
And 31 in evidence. Is that the same chest from the opposite view?
Yes, it is.
Okay, what items are on that picture?
There is a 9mm pistol with the slide pulled back, kind of in the center of the photograph.
Right here?
Yes.
.32 in evidence. Is that a close-up of that same item?
Yes, it is.
.33 in evidence. What is that?
That's a brown suede holster that was found on a table in the bedroom.
And 29. What is that item?
That is a black nylon holster with a belt
Where was that found?
in the bedroom.
Were those items collected?
Yes, they were.
And were they in the other evidence items which have now been introduced
Yes,
as Z?
that's correct.
Check, 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 check.
Mic check, mic check. A 1, 2, mic check. Witnesses took the stand today to describe what it's like. Witnesses took the stand today to describe what it was like when Jason Rodriguez told the jury what they believe was the motive. Jason Rodriguez had been fired, and why they believe Otis Beckford was killed. Beverly said Rodriguez's work performance was poor, and Beckford was a model employee. I guess I'm not going to get my computer tonight since your organization need help. Is that it? Yeah. I could ask Holly to bring it, but she's such a mess. She's
up over because there are plants that are on top of the file cabinets.
And he was looking over top of the cube.
And once you have accomplished that, what do you do with this item?
It gets also sent to the state lab.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce you for identification into evidence.
No objection.
It will be received in evidence. The state's numbered
37.
I have no other questions at this witness, Your Honor.
cross-examination.
None.
Thank you, ma'am. You may be excused.
Thank you.
State will call the next witness.
Edward Vandenberg. Vandenberg.
You solemnly swear the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon. Please tell the court and the jury your name and occupation.
Edward Vandenberg. I am a crime scene technician for the Orlando Police Department.
How long have you been with OPD?
8 years.
All 8 as a crime scene technician?
Yes, ma'am.
As a result of your employment, were you asked to complete certain tasks in connection with the shooting at 1000 Legion Place on November 6th of 2009?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that include contact with the defendant, Mr. Jason Rodriguez?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you photograph Mr. Rodriguez in the Orlando Police Headquarters on that date?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as states AW and AB for identification.
Yes, ma'am. These are the photographs I took.
And do those photographs fairly and accurately depict how Mr. Rodriguez looked in the Orlando Police Department on November 6th of 2009?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the clothing that he was brought in wearing, to your knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, at this point, I would seek to introduce AV and AW for identification and evidence.
What says to defense?
No objection.
The receiving evidence is states numbered.
AV states 38, AW states 39.
Permission to publish those items briefly to the jury, Your Honor.
You may publish.
39. Did detectives also ask you to collect certain items of evidence from Mr. Rodriguez while he was at Orlando Police Headquarters?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what items of evidence were those?
His clothing, a buccal swab.
What is that?
That is a swab with a Q-tip from the inside of the cheek, the buccal area of the mouth.
Okay, do you have some knowledge as to the purpose of that?
You can obtain the swab. It should have his DNA on it. They could take it.
What's the objection?
He's been designated as a collector of evidence. He hasn't been designated as an expert as to what that evidence is showing or what it is used or how it's tested.
Sustain.
As part of your training and experience, have you learned the purpose of the use of a buccal swab?
Yes, ma'am.
And what have you learned?
I've learned they take DNA from the swab.
Overruled.
Takes DNA from the swab, which they can compare it to other items from whatever.
All right, you don't actually do the comparisons yourself, correct?
No, ma'am, I do not.
You're simply collecting evidence based on a request from a detective consistent with your training.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as V as in Victor for identification. Ask you to take a look at this item and tell me if you recognize it as something you've had contact with.
Yes, ma'am. This is the envelope that contained the buccal swab of Mr. Jason Samuel Rodriguez.
All right. Do you see that individual in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Where is he seated and what is he wearing?
He's wearing the light shirt without a tie, sitting at the table.
Your Honor, would the record reflect that CST Vandenberg has identified the defendant?
The record will so indicate.
And were you asked to collect another item of evidence?
Yes, ma'am. I was asked to obtain a gunshot residue kit from the defendant.
Before we get to that, I would seek to introduce V for identification into evidence.
What says to defense?
No objection.
Be received in evidence as.
Have you received training as to how to collect a gunshot residue kit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how many times have you collected this type of evidence from individuals?
Quite a number of times in the past, ma'am.
All right. And what is involved in the collection process?
You take there's usually two vials where you pull the top, and it's, I guess, like almost like an adhesive, and you would basically rub that onto certain parts of the hand, whether it's left or right. Actually, both hands are done. Place it back into the vial and secure the envelope.
May I have a moment with the clerk?
You may.
There are a series of questions on a form that come with the kit.
Yes, ma'am, there are.
Okay. And based on your training and experience, what is the purpose of the questioning?
The questioning is coincides with the kit in order for when the lab technician gets it, he can see, based on the answers from the suspect, they can see basically where he was or what he did within that time period. Did he wash his hands? He's left-handed, right-handed.
All right. I'm going to approach with court's permission with states X for identification. Do you recognize first the paper bag and then the items that I have pulled out, including an information form?
Yes, ma'am. The brown packaging is the package I used to package the gunshot residue kit. The form here is the form I filled out that day. And the GSR kit, along with the 2 vials, are in here in the white envelope.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to deduce the reference lettered exhibit for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objection.
Be received in evidence as
State 41.
Now, what questions do you ask in which order?
In the order it is written on this paper, what is printed on this paper.
And did you ask Mr. Rodriguez certain questions during the collection process?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did that include his name and date of birth?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay. Does it include handedness?
Yes, it does.
Right. Did he reply whether or not he was left or right-handed?
He is right-handed, he stated to me.
Did you ask him whether or not he had washed his hands?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did he reply?
He stated that he had taken a shower and had something to eat.
Okay. Did you ask him where he took his shower?
He stated he went home.
All right. Did he repeat again that he had taken a shower and had something to eat?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Did you ask him what he did for employment?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
Did he reply?
He replied that I am a civil engineer with no life.
And did you ask if he had any hobbies?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what did he say?
I duck hunt and do karate.
I have no other questions of the witness at this time, Your Honor.
cross-examination.
No questions.
May the witness be excused.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You may be excused.
Thank you, sir.
State may call that next witness.
Laura Wentz. W-E-N-Z. Wentz.
Laura Wentz.
You solemnly swear the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the court and the jury your name and occupation.
My name is Laura Wentz. I'm a senior crime laboratory analyst in the Orlando Regional Operations Center Crime Laboratory in the biology DNA section.
All right. What sort of, just briefly, what sort of background do you have that qualifies you to hold that position?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology. I also have about 50 to 60 graduate hours in statistics, genetics, biochemistry, and molecular biology. I've been working in the field of biology using those techniques for over 34 years, specifically forensic applications for about 14 years. I have several scientific publications, and I've completed the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Analyst Training Program.
Have you had the opportunity to testify in court before as an expert witness in the field of DNA identification?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Here in Orange County?
Yes.
Okay. And in other jurisdictions throughout the state of Florida?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I would tender Ms. Wentz as an expert in the field of DNA.
Any objections?
No objection.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Ms. Wentz will be accepted as expert witness in the area of DNA analysis and permitted to render opinions. You may continue.
Ms. Wentz, as a result of your employment with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, were you asked to look at evidence items in connection with the shooting at 1000 Legion Place with a victim named Otis Beckford, subject Jason Rodriguez?
Yes, I was.
Okay, the Orlando Police Department sent evidence items to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When you retrieved those items, did they appear to be in a sealed, unaltered, or tampered with condition?
Yes, they did.
Okay, I'm going to show you what has been introduced into evidence as states 37 and 40. If I may approach the witness.
You may.
Do those two items of evidence appear to be ones that you're in contact with?
Yes, they do. I recognize them by the FDLE case number, the item number, and my initials. And also, again, the FDLE case number, the item number, and my initials.
Okay. And what are those two items?
These are items K1 and Q8. K1 is represented as being buccal swabs from Jason, Mr. Rodriguez. And Q8 is indicated as being a swab from the High Point pistol.
Okay. And that's what comes to you, correct? The gun itself would not come to you for analysis?
In this particular case, the gun itself did not come to me. I received a swab.
Okay. And are you able to perform any DNA testing on those items?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Can you give us a brief description of how that occurs?
Yes. Basically, what I would do is I would take the item and evaluate whether or not I'm going to be able to perform DNA analysis. In this case, it was swabbing so that I could know that I was going to be taking it forward for DNA analysis. Briefly, DNA analysis involves extraction of the DNA from the material that may be containing the DNA. That means I'm opening up the cell where the DNA is, and then removing it from the cell so I can test it. After that, I quantify about how much DNA is present. And once I quantify that, then I make millions of copies using a process called polymerase chain reaction, which is an amplification process. It's sort of like a molecular Xerox machine where I'm making millions of copies of the areas of the DNA that I want to look at. Then I would also do the same thing. That would be for both of those items, and then I would compare those two items to see whether or not the DNA profile developed is similar or is the same.
The item that you said was sent from the Orlando Police Department and represented to be the buccal swab of Jason Rodriguez, were you able to obtain a profile on that item?
Yes, I was. I was able to obtain a complete profile from the buccal swab represented as being from Mr. Rodriguez.
How about the swab represented as coming from a High Point pistol? Were you able to obtain a DNA profile from that swab?
The High Point pistol, I was able to obtain a partial profile. That means I wasn't able, because of the low level of DNA, to get a complete profile. A complete profile would mean that I had results that I could interpret at 13 of the locations that we look at on the DNA. In this case, I was only able to interpret at 5 of the 13, so that was a partial profile.
Is that an unusual result for an item that is swabbed for touch DNA?
It varies. This would be a handler type of DNA, and it really varies as to what type of swabbing is taken and how much DNA is present to begin with.
All right. What is touch DNA?
Touch DNA is when you just briefly touch an item. Say, for instance, I brushed against a person or patted them on the back, or I touched the top of this surface. That would be considered touch DNA.
Even though you are only able to get a limited profile, would that enable you to come to any conclusions about the relationship, if any, between the two items?
For the 5 locations that I was able to obtain in that particular profile, they matched the profile from Mr. Rodriguez at those 5 locations.
Okay. And once you have that level of a match, what do you do with that information?
After we obtain a match, then we want to determine what the significance of that particular match is. For instance, if every other person in the world had the same profile, there wouldn't be a very high significance for having the same one. So what we do is we calculate how common or rare that particular profile is in the population that we are looking at.
Okay. Were you able to do that in this case?
Yes, I was.
And what result did you come up with?
The result for that, comparing the swab from the High Point pistol to the DNA profile obtained from Mr. Rodriguez at those 5 locations, the statistics were the frequency of that particular profile, in other words, was 1 in 620,000 Caucasians, 1 in 5.8 million African Americans or blacks, and 1 in 900,000 Southeastern Hispanics.
Thank you. I have no other questions of the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
No questions.
May the witness be excused.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. You may be excused.
Thank you.
State may call the next witness.
Matthew Conway.
Solemnly swear the testimony she gives shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the court and the jury your name and occupation.
My name is Matthew Conway, and I am a senior crime laboratory analyst, and I work for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which is also known as FDLE, and I work at the Orlando Regional Operations Center at the Crime Lab.
Is there a particular section to which you are assigned?
Yes, there is. I'm assigned to the Firearms and Toolmark section at the Crime Lab.
What sort of education and background do you have that qualifies you to hold that position?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Forensic Science from the University of Central Florida, and also while I was employed with FDLE, I underwent an extensive training program in the area of firearms and toolmark identification.
Have you had the opportunity to testify as an expert witness in the area of firearm and toolmark identification?
Yes, I have.
Here in Orange County?
Yes, I have.
As well as throughout other jurisdictions in the state of Florida?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I would tender Mr. Conway as an expert in the field of firearms and toolmark identification.
What says to defense?
No objection.
Members of the jury, Mr. Conway be accepted as an expert witness in the area of firearms and toolmark identification. You may continue.
Thank you. How is it that you are able to make identifications between, say, a firearm and shell casings from a firearm?
When a cartridge is the component of live ammunition before it's fired, and when you fire that cartridge in a firearm, the projectile, which is also called the bullet, will be expelled from the firearm, and the cartridge case is what's left over. It's the container. When that cartridge is fired, it is slammed back against what's called the breech face of the firearm, which is a supporting surface. Also, a firing pin will come out and strike the primer of that cartridge. And any microscopic imperfections on the surface of the breech face and also on the firing pin impression, the front part of that firing pin impression, will be imparted onto that cartridge case. What I can do is, if I receive a suspect firearm, we have a range in the laboratory and actually test fire that firearm and compare a test-fired cartridge case to submitted evidence cartridge cases. And that's done using a comparison microscope. And the comparison microscope is basically two microscopes that are connected by what's called an optical bridge. I can actually see the two different cartridge cases at the same time through the microscope and compare them directly.
Does it matter who manufactured that particular cartridge?
No, not necessarily. There's many companies that make cartridges, and what you can see is in differences in how they're marked, but it's always still possible, at least, to compare one brand to another.
All right. As a result of your employment with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, were you asked to look at evidence items by the Orlando Police Department in connection with their investigation into the shooting at 1000 Legion Place?
Yes.
If I may approach the witness.
You may.
I'm going to show you items that have been introduced into evidence as states 17, 18, 19, 16, and 36. Take a look at these packages and tell me if you recognize them as something that you've had contact with in the past.
Yes, I recognize all of the packaging for the items.
And what do you recognize them to be?
I recognize them to be evidence that was submitted by the Orlando Police Department.
All right. How is it that you come to the conclusion that those are items that you've tested or had contact with?
Looking at the packaging, I can see our FDLE case number. There's a sticker that's placed onto the item when it's received by the laboratory. I can also see that same case number, exhibit number, and my initials in my own handwriting. And also my initials across the tape seal that I placed upon completion of my examination.
All right. Is the same true for each evidence item?
Yes, it is.
All right. Is that a firearm as well as several shell casings or cartridge cases?
Yes, the box contains a firearm that I received, and the envelopes contain each a fire cartridge case, and the manila envelope contains also fired cartridge cases.
All right. Did you perform any testing with the firearm prior to the comparison process that you described earlier?
Yes.
And what did you do?
It's a normal part of our procedure. When I receive a firearm, my first step would be to simply examine it, determine what make and model, what caliber it is, and take notes to that effect. And also in that process, I'm examining a firearm to determine if I think that it is safe to test fire, because that will be a normal part of my process.
All right. Did that firearm come with a magazine?
It did not.
Of any sort. Is it designed to carry a magazine?
Yes, it's designed to use a magazine, yes.
Okay. Is there a capacity to the magazine that firearm is designed to carry?
This is a high-point semi-automatic pistol, and these pistols would normally come with either an 8 magazine that has a capacity of 8 cartridges or 10 cartridges.
When you performed a comparison between your test-fired cartridge cases and the questioned items of evidence, the 20 cartridge cases submitted by the Orlando Police Department, were you able to come up with any result?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And how was that examination performed? As you described earlier with the stereo microscope?
Yes, I test fired the submitted firearm. I used the magazine from a laboratory pistol. We have pistols of the same make and model in the laboratory. I used one of those magazines and test fired it using laboratory ammunition. And then took the test fired cartridge cases and compared them using the comparison microscope to there's a total of 20 fired cartridge cases, and compared a test fired cartridge case to each one of those.
All right. As a semi-automatic handgun, will that gun expel bullets simply by pulling the trigger repeatedly?
If you would like, I can demonstrate.
Certainly.
This is actually the pistol that was test fired. It's a high point pistol, and this is the magazine well, and there would be a magazine that would be loaded with cartridges, and the magazines for this pistol, you would load either 8 or 10. There's two different types of magazines, or capacity of magazine. The magazine is inserted into the magazine well. For the first shot, the slide, this is the portion that slides back and forth across the top of the pistol. For the first shot, that slide is pulled manually all the way to the rear, and then the shooter would let go of that slide. And what that would do is strip the first cartridge from the magazine internally from the magazine and insert it into the chamber. And the chamber is the rear portion of the barrel. This is the barrel that you see here. Currently, the slide is locked in the rearward position. But the slide would be all the way forward, and then at that point, the shooter would simply pull the trigger in order to fire the first shot. Part of the pressure from firing that cartridge is pushing the projectile down and out of the barrel, but it's also pushing rearward on the cartridge case, which moves the slide to the rear. And when it does that, it's going to also extract and eject the now empty cartridge case from the pistol, and it's expelled from the ejection port in the slide. There's a spring inside the slide that now pulls it closed, and in doing that, it's going to take the next cartridge from the magazine and insert it into the chamber. So for the next shot, the shooter would just simply pull the trigger. And you could simply pull the trigger each time, firing each shot, as long as there's ammunition in the magazine.
How is it that the magazine would be removed from the firearm?
The magazine is removed by pressing, this is the magazine release, and by pressing that button inward, the magazine can be pulled out from the magazine well.
We had a description earlier that the slide of the handgun was in a locked back position when it was found. What does that mean to you?
That's actually how it is, how we have it here currently. There's this lever here, which also acts as a safety. The lever, when it's pushed upward into this position with the slide rearward, there's a notch in the slide that's actually going to hold the slide back in the rearward position.
As a result of your examination of that firearm and the shell casings in front of you, did you come to any conclusions or opinions about whether or not the 20 shell casings or cartridge cases were fired in that firearm?
Yes, I did.
And what is your opinion?
I was able to conclude that all 20 of the fired cartridge cases were fired in this particular high-point pistol.
I have no other questions for the witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
Cross-examination?
No questions.
May the witness be excused.
You may.
Thank you, sir. You may be excused.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
State may call the next witness.
Your Honor, I believe we have concluded our presentation for the day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this concludes our presentation of evidence for today. We'll be in recess to Tuesday morning until 9:30. Monday is Veterans Day. This is a long weekend. Please remember, and I'm going to reinforce some things I told you earlier. You may be tempted, or folks may be tempted, to try to ask questions of you. Please do not discuss this case with others. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not go on any of the social media and indicate that you are serving on this jury or anything whatsoever about this case. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news accounts. And again, do not do any research on this case. I hope you have a nice, enjoyable, quiet weekend. Are there any veterans here? Happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your service, sir. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state?
No, Your
Or
Honor.
the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, you're hereby excused. See you Monday at 9:30. Tuesday.